Thank you so much, Beth. Everybody give a wee round of applause to Beth. Thank you for that introduction. Thank you. So my name is Katrina Duffy. Everybody just calls me Kat. And without blowing my own trumpet, I am a wedding planner extraordinaire behind the company Finn Flipcra. If you are curious as to know the reason behind the business name, feel free to come and chat to me afterwards. It's probably one of the things I get asked most about in terms of what's the meaning behind my name. So today I'm here to talk to you about your beginner's guide to planning a wedding, breaking it down month by month. So you've gotten engaged. Woohoo! Well done. Congratulations. You've made it this far. Well done. So that's a really exciting time. You've started your wedding planning journey and you're probably thinking to yourself, well, what's the first thing that I need to do? And my advice would be hire a wedding planner. So thank you so much for coming to my talk today. I really appreciate it. Just kidding. That's not the talk, I promise. There's more advice to be given. So first things I want to caveat are this is based on an average engagement of about 18 months. So if your engagement period or your wedding planning period is slightly shorter, slightly longer, this is a good indication of what you should be looking at. The suppliers included within this are also your most common suppliers. So depending on the type of style of wedding that you're having, you might need more or less of some of the suppliers that I'm going to touch on as part of today. So it is a general guide. It doesn't cover all kinds of weddings. Obviously, if you're choosing to get married in a marquee, you've got a lot more to think about than if you're perhaps getting married in a hotel, which has got its own catering staff on site. So just a few things to take into consideration. Your wedding planning journey might start to feel a little bit like this. Anybody sort of nodding in recognition of, yeah, it feels like a bit of I'm seeing a few smiles and nods. That's perfectly normal. That is absolutely perfectly normal. Your wedding planning journey will feel like a bit of a curve. You've got lots going on at certain points of the journey, and then there'll be periods where there's not a lot happening. That's absolutely fine. Under no circumstances over an 18-month period should you be thinking, talking, and doing something related to your wedding every single day for a year and a half. That's exhausting. So no, that isn't the case. You want to have a bit of busyness while you're booking all your suppliers at the start, a little bit closer, next flurry of activities, you're booking some of the suppliers later on, and then you'll have a little bit of a quiet period, and then you'll get to your final few weeks, and that's where it truly kicks off and getting all the final bits and pieces done. So it's perfectly normal for it to feel a bit like that. So before we start your planning, ultimately the first two things you want to be thinking about are these, because they are going to make the decisions that you have to come relative in every decision-making process as part of that. So budget, guest list. Those are going to determine the size of your venue, how big your wedding's going to be, the type of venue, the size of venue. So it's really important that you establish these things first before even beginning approaching venues, before beginning approaching suppliers. My top tip with budget is be honest with the suppliers when you're contacting them. Tell them what your budget is, be upfront about it, and then they can actually have a conversation. Excuse me? Sorry, I've got to go. Nobody here? No? All good. Sorry about that. So as I was saying, yeah, be upfront about your budget. I know it can seem daunting because you don't really know what you don't know when you're starting your wedding planning, but you'll all have in mind a budget that you're planning on spending. In the same way that if you're going to buy a car, I'm pretty confident before you go buy a car, you know whether you're going to be heading to the Fiat dealership or if you're heading to the Ferrari dealership. The same thing applies with your wedding budget. You'll have an amount in mind that you'll want to spend and an upper limit that you probably don't want to exceed. Be upfront, honest about that, and then your suppliers can actually adapt their approach and be honest about what you can expect to achieve for that budget. Same goes for your guest list. Guest list, really important that you have a good idea of your numbers before you start looking at venues. Nothing worse than going and seeing this absolutely beautiful venue, you've fallen in love with it, it's perfect, but it can only accommodate 60 people and your guest list is probably going to be 100 at minimum. Don't do that to yourself. So think about who your immediate must-haves are at your wedding and then work from there in terms of your guest list. And that should give you an average indication of how many people you can expect to have. It won't be exact at this stage, but you'll have a good idea in order to be able to then go and look at appropriate venues that will fit that size of guest list. So the first suppliers that you want to really be looking at as part of your wedding planning is the priority suppliers. Now, these are suppliers that tend to either book out really far in advance, are really popular for certain dates, summer months, bank holiday weekends, all of those sorts of things can be what drives the popularity of these suppliers. So you really want to make sure that you're getting them booked as soon as possible. So first up goes without saying, you've got your venue. If, however, you're having a venue that requires its own catering brought in, you do want to think about catering quite soon as well. So dry hires, barns, that type of idea. Photo and film. Again, really popular. A lot of popular dates fill up quite quickly with those suppliers, so you want to make sure you get them booked in quite quickly. I always recommend getting your celebrant booked as early as possible. The reason being is a lot of people think, oh, I can book that much closer to the time, but ultimately your celebrant is going to help you create the main event for your wedding day. So it's really important that you get the right person that's going to help you create that. So I would recommend getting that booked as soon as possible so that you know the tone that you're setting as part of your wedding day. I'm laughing. I've got David, the humanist, at the back there just going, yes, Kat, that's exactly what you should be doing. The other thing as well, your band and DJ. Now, you'll probably notice every single one of these suppliers, with the exception of your celebrant, are going to be there for the full duration of your wedding day. So it is really important that you get them booked as far as in advance as possible. Next up, you're probably looking at the 12 months out period. So these are your probably bigger things that you want to start thinking about at this stage. Outfits. Now, again, this all depends on whether or not you're perhaps having something maybe bespoke made. So if you're wanting a bespoke outfit, that is going to require a little bit more time. So you probably want to start researching that sooner. Again, you want to be going and trying on as many outfits as possible to find something that works for you and allow time for alterations. Styles, tastes change. I wouldn't recommend doing it any earlier than the 12-month mark. I have had a situation where one of my brides many years ago bought her wedding dress 2 years in advance of her wedding and then bought another one the year before because she didn't like the original one anymore. So don't do that. So yeah, 12 months out for that sort of thing. Stationery, I recommend looking at stationery about this stage, particularly if you're going to be doing save the dates. And if you're looking at save the dates, you then got your invites, your RSVPs, right the way through to your stationery on the day. So if you want a really joined up approach so that your stationery matches from the start to the end, it's a really good time to start looking at that early on, particularly if you want a bespoke design as well. It's not a must-have at this stage, but it's a recommendation, particularly, as I say, if you're doing save the dates. Flowers, again, you want to get them booked as quickly as possible. By the time you've booked your venue, you'll have a good idea of how much or how little decor it needs. So if you're in a dry hire barn venue, you might find that it requires a lot more styling, more decor. So you want to get your florist, decor, rentals, things like that booked as early as possible. Other things to consider as well, depending on the type of venue that you've booked, you might have to hire in things such as chairs, tables, linens, all of your decor in that respect. So again, you want to have something for your guests to eat their meal on, get that booked as quickly as you possibly can. Beauty. So if you are planning on having a hair and makeup team for your wedding party in the morning, definitely want to get that booked out as soon as possible. They can get booked up very early, popular dates. An example, now bear in mind this is obviously post the thing that shall not be named. I did have a situation where I had to go through 30 plus inquiries with different hair and makeup artists to get finally find somebody that I could book for one of my couples because it was a particularly popular date. So they do book up quite fast. And if you do want the one that you really are interested in, you want to get in touch with them as soon as possible. And again, a coordinator. I'm going to come on to that in a little bit more detail later on. So right about the six to 9 months out, you want to start thinking about other suppliers. So when I talk about musicians, what I'm referring to here is your musicians for sort of during the daytime. So your ceremony, for your drinks reception, those side of things. So are you wanting live musicians? You want to start looking at inquiring with them to get them booked in for that part of the day. Again, things like your rings, particularly again, if you're having bespoke designs made, good to get that sorted as early as possible to give enough time to have them arranged if you're doing something more bespoke. Transport. Now, by the 6 to 9 month mark, you're going to have a better idea of your guest numbers. You're going to have an idea of the venue. So you're going to know, do you need transportation for your guests to and from the venue? You're going to know if you're going to need transportation for you, your wedding party. So again, these are things you want to start booking out provisionally at this point as well. Cake, quite sure we've had a few tastings. There's some amazing cake suppliers here today. So I would definitely recommend going, trying a few, and then getting that booked in if that is something that you're planning on including. Other things, again, Favors, gifts, and other types of entertainment. And what I mean by that is things like photo booths, magicians, glitter bars, other kinds of entertainment that you're maybe wanting to have for your guest experience throughout the wedding day. So those are things you maybe want to be starting to think about at that stage. So, final few weeks. You might start to feel a wee bit like this. But fear not, help is at hand. It's going to sound like a bit of a plug, but I promise you it's true. You definitely want to start thinking about hiring potentially a coordinator. Now, there are different types of coordinators out there. You've probably seen it on the day coordinators, wedding management, event management. These are the sort of suppliers that can come in those final few weeks and take the reins off all of your administration, all of your contacts with all of your suppliers, and help kind of take you and hold your hand through to get you up the aisle. Those final few weeks can be very intense. You've got a lot of due dates, you've got a lot of final decisions to make, you have got deadlines, you've got timelines, all of those sorts of things need to be confirmed at that stage, and you'll have well-meaning family, friends and guests bombarding you with 20 million questions. That's from years of experience. I've never seen anything different. Now, you can get, as I say, various different types of service. So you'll have some planners who can come on a final few weeks. I, for example, come on 6 weeks before my couple's weddings, generally speaking, and I will literally deal with all the communication with the suppliers at that stage. So ultimately, the only person that you're dealing with is pretty much me. It means that you can switch off and be like, okay, I don't have to think about that. I can just enjoy the final run-up with my family and friends. Other services can be planners who do offer a week of service. They'll do a handover with you and then they'll just come along on the day and you'll basically do all the admin running up to that point as well. So there are different options out there. I would say that probably there is no such thing as a true on the day. I do not, and none of my colleagues just rock up the morning of your wedding and go, ta-da, we're here, tell us what you need. There's usually going to be some sort of handover at least a week or two in advance, if not earlier. If, however, you are a type A personality like myself, a bit of a Monica, and you think, actually, do you know what? I've got this in the bag. I can absolutely handle the final few weeks all by myself. These are some of the things I would definitely suggest that you want to be aware of and plan in advance to make those final few weeks as seamless as possible. A good spreadsheet, a good checklist, a good to-do list will help manage this. Know when your due dates are. You don't want to have your suppliers chasing you for final payments. That's just awkward for them and awkward for you. Make sure you've got your checklist, ticking everything off that you need to have ready for when you need it, and an itinerary for the day for your family, your friends, and yourself will be really beneficial in terms of helping everybody understand where they need to be and when. Delegate. That's what your wedding party is there for. They have roles and responsibilities. What I would say, in my experience, is if you are the first in your group of friends to be getting married, your wedding party will need some help understanding what their role is because they've never been married usually, so they don't know what to expect. If you're perhaps later in your group of friends getting married, most of your pals in your wedding party will get it and will be all over it. So just be aware of that in terms of who you're delegating things to. And pack in advance. If you are going to your venue the night before, 2 days before, don't be like, oh, I'll chuck everything in a bag and a few boxes a couple of days before. That's just creating stress that you do not need. Pack in advance, pack weeks in advance and put together a little itinerary of what's going in where so that you know at the other side where everything is. Plus as well, if you're doing your own decor or bringing along some of your own DIY stuff, it really helps to have that written out in any boxes that you're packing so it makes it easier at the other end for yourself. And once you've done all that, you just have to remember to let go and enjoy. You've made it. It's your wedding day. Relax, switch off. You've done everything that you possibly can do. There's nothing more that you can do at that stage. And my biggest probably piece of advice that I say to a lot of my couples is there's no such thing as a perfect day. I can't stress that enough. Your day will be as perfect as you allow it to be. You set the tone, the vibe, and the attitude for how your day is going to be. So ultimately, embrace it. Things might go wrong, that's okay. And I talk from very personal experience as a bride. When cutting the cake, my husband felt that the knife perhaps needed a little bit more pressure put on it, and our cake completely flipped and fell. Now, if you'd have told me before my wedding, I'd have been like, oh my God, it's a disaster. No. Those are some of my favorite wedding photos. The photographer just kept clicking, and it's literally like a flick book of watching me realize, oh my God, this is happening. The cake's going, holy, do you know what I mean? So I love those photos. And on our anniversary every year, those are the pictures that all my friends and family share across all the social media because they all remember it's their anniversary. So I truly do mean that. Your day will be as perfect as you allow it to be. It's one of my favourite memories. So don't overthink stuff and just switch off and enjoy. So I hope that has been helpful. If any of you have any questions, Beth will come over if you want to ask now in a public setting, although if you don't, I will be here for about half an hour afterwards, so feel free to come up and speak to me. And if you do maybe want to drop me a line afterwards, my business cards are dotted on the chairs here, so please help yourself. And thank you so much.